Okay. So today we're going to go through a high-level overview of grants. We're going to basically talk about, let me get my screen shared. Should be shared. We're going to talk about identifying needs for grants, researching grants, and applying for grants so you can have a successful grant program. So identifying your funding needs. When you're looking for grants, you are not going to have one grant that is just perfect for your project and covers everything you need. So you need to identify what your funding needs are. It could be a research project. It could be a summer program for youth or a feeding school lunch program during the summer, building repair. Maybe you have an organization, a museum, that historical building that needs repair, or operational costs, which are salaries, different things for offices. So think of what the things you need funding for would be, prioritize those because you may not be able to get funding for everything at one time, and keep that list handy. So after you have your list of needed funds, you want to research grants that could fit your need. So one type of grant is government funding sources. Usually these can be high amounts, $1 million or more, and they require a lot more management. So if you're just starting out in grants, you would want to start out with a much smaller one, but government grants are a good way to fund big projects. Each of these links, you'll see here, the National Institute of Health is one organization, Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, grants.gov. Not only do they have grants for municipalities, you can also find organizations and other types. But the slide deck will be on our Knowledge Center, and you'll have these links in there as well to go through. So you've got government grants. You've got private foundations. We're pretty lucky in North Carolina that we have many foundations. Certainly, we've got the Golden Leaf, we've got the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation. Those are both North Carolina based. We have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That is a global foundation, but they also have programs that may fit something local. The good thing about the Golden Leaf and Z. Smith Reynolds, you can usually, if you want to fund a local North Carolina project, they're very accessible to you. You can talk to the folks at the foundations, and it's can be a little less daunting than, say, a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Local and community funding. You might be able to go to your town or your county. Some towns have things like facade grants, where you can get money to rehab the front of a building, a storefront of a building in downtown. Counties, your local arts councils, the state arts council gives grant money to local arts councils, and that's how they give out their funds. Instead of funding from the state level, because they don't know all the communities, they give the funding to the local levels so they can better vet the projects and make sure it's going to something that fits their priorities. Banks, the bank that you have your money with has grants. All banks have a grant charity arm. So you can go to a website of a bank and you'll be able to click through and find their giving priorities, what their grants are for, and you already have a relationship with that bank. So that may be a good place to look for local grants. When you're ready to apply for a grant, of course, you've found, I would say, a handful of grants that could apply to what your project is. You want to read the guidelines very carefully. Pay attention to eligibility. If it says you must be a 501c3, then you must be a 501c3. It can't be that you're not for profit, but you don't have your tax paperwork. They're very serious on their eligibility. The people that give grants, the organizations that give them, get many more requests than they can give money to. So the eligibility requirements is one way to get the list a little smaller for them. You want to make sure that your project goals match the grantor's priorities. If your goal is to assist an adult daycare program, but the priorities of the grant you're applying for is for youth development, you're probably not going to have much of a chance. So you wouldn't want to spend time on a grant that doesn't match priorities. Identify deadlines and submission procedures. There are many grants that not only is there a submission deadline, which everybody understands that, but there may also be a webinar you have to attend. There'll be several webinars. You sign up for that webinar, and then they go through the procedure of how to apply. There may also be a letter of intent deadline where before you apply, they say, you must contact us by this date with the basics of your project before we will even let you move forward with applying. So there may be many levels of deadlines, or it may just be submit this information by this date, and that's okay too. Be prepared to provide supporting documentation. There are smaller grants that require very little documentation, maybe your IRS paperwork, maybe a budget for your project, certainly the scope of your project, what you identify the issue as, how you're going to plan to fund that issue to make a difference. But there are some that require balance sheets, bank statements, letters of support. There are some that have a lot of documentation. So be sure whatever it is they're wanting supplied, that you are ready to supply it. Communicate with the grantor. The organizations that are giving grants, whether it's state level, local level, foundations, they want to give out this money, and they want to give it out to a qualified organization that will do the best work with the money. So if you can get a phone number, an email, almost all grant sites will say, here's the email for more information, and they want to hear from you. As you go along, there are many grantor organizations that will read through your application and say, maybe this, maybe that. They want to help. That's what they're there for. So make sure you have good communication with the grantor. Craft a compelling narrative. That's your story. No one knows your story, excuse me, like you do. There are many AI programs out there. There are grant writing AI programs. I don't think it's a bad thing. However, AI cannot tell your story in a compelling way. So if you happen to use AI products, then make sure you're going back through all that information in plenty of time to craft your story from the information it may have given you. Clearly define the problem you're addressing. You know the problem you want to solve or work on. Make sure that you are defining that well enough for the grantor to understand. Explain your solution and the impact. What is the grant going toward, and how will that make an impact on the project? Develop a realistic budget. Don't pad it, but make sure it's realistic, so you're not at the end scrambling for money when you should have planned for that money in the first place. Proofread carefully. Submit before the deadline date. It is so important not to wait until that last day. Maybe you can't get logged in, and the one person at the organization that does that is not there that day, or you can't get something to attach correctly and you have to go through a few different ways to make it a different format to try to get it to attach. Maybe something's too large and you have to split it up. I went through every bit of that for a state of Mississippi. It was actually a renewal that I had to do for state of Mississippi, and every bit of that came up, and it took 3 or 4 days to resolve all of it. So never wait till the last minute for something, even though you think, I've got this, it'll be easy to submit. It's probably not going to be easy to submit. So once you've identified your project, you've found a grant you want to apply for, you have applied for it, and they have awarded the grant, then it is your responsibility, or your organization's, to manage the funds you are given. So you'll take your funds, develop a project plan and timeline, which you probably already have, but maybe getting the grant money has changed a few details. Track expenses and meet reporting requirements. Some grants will give you a template and say you have to turn this in by a certain date, has to have all your expenses on there. Even if they don't specifically say you need that, do that anyway, so you always know where your grant funds went in case they do ask. Maintain communication with the grantor. If anything goes sideways, maybe there's a supply you needed and it's back ordered, you can't get it in time, or it has delayed some other things, you had a big patch of bad weather, make sure you're talking to the grantor so they know there could potentially be a problem. If you have great success on your project and something went absolutely wonderfully well, tell them that also. That really will make anyone's day to hear something successful. Evaluate the project's impact. Did you meet the goal you plan to meet? Did you make an impact? And prepare final reports. Not all grants require them, but certainly larger ones do. And even if they don't require them, it's one of those things that will help you with your project, will help you determine that you were on the right path. You may need to report to a board of directors, but always along the way, keep that final report in mind. What do you need for that final report? Are you moving toward your final goal? So that is just the basics of how we work with loans. My email is here, as is our Uplift website. On our Uplift website, we have a Knowledge Center. If you go to the Knowledge Center, you will see many things. You'll see videos of webinars that we've done in the past. You will see a list of grants and loans. We have an extensive database. It's over 500 opportunities. You can search through that for grant opportunities. That doesn't mean I wouldn't do the others, because we certainly don't have every grant opportunity that's available to you on our site. We research every day, we add some every day, but you want to search through that if you have interest, or you can also contact me, and I have appointments every day that you can schedule an appointment, tell me more about your project, and then we'll chat about that. And I will go back and do more research with my team and send you a document with some opportunities I think may fit your project. So we can do that to help you with the beginning grant process as well.